Hey, welcome to episode 27 of PixlFeed Radio, and I'm here with my friend Howard Gottlieb. How you doing, Howard? Oh my
All
God.
right.
Yeah, what we just went through just to get this going today. Oh my God. Thank you so much for being patient. That's all I got to say right now.
Great start, didn't we have one?
I know. It happens. That's the beautiful world of technology. So,
Yes,
all
it
right.
is.
So let's talk about Read-a-thon. And Howard, why don't you tell us about the company, what you're doing? It's fundraising. It's for a good cause. It's all about reading for kids, raising money. I'm an avid reader myself, so this is why this program piqued my interest from the get-go. So why don't we just go right into it and talk about what the program is and what is it that you guys are doing?
Okay. Well, we started Read-a-thon about 6 years ago, and we took an old-fashioned reading idea that people have done for decades, and we digitalized it. And the timing was real good. Schools try to raise money in a whole bunch of different ways. So our thought was, well, why don't they just monetize what they're already doing? Since hopefully most kids in schools read anyway. If we could give them the resources to, one, get their kids excited about reading, and two, raise money while doing it, it was an absolute win for the schools. So we spent about 2 years in development before we were willing to launch it. Launched it about 5 years ago, and it's been fabulous ever since. We've been expanding all over the country. We're in about 4 different countries now. It's been a fabulous program for schools to change the way they raise money.
That's awesome. So every time I have somebody on the show, I like to find out about their background and how they got to where they got. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you come from? Like, when, obviously, to do something like this, you got to be an entrepreneur, a part of entrepreneur. You got to have that in you. So how what's your story? How do we go from, when you were a kid, were you trying to start businesses? Were you selling stuff, or did you work for somebody else at first? And then one day you just woke up and say, I want to change kids' lives. What do I do? Or how do I do it? And the idea came up.
Right. So I was a sports writer in college. I actually covered the Philadelphia Eagles. Went
Nice.
into my sports editor one day and I said, actually, I went into the publisher's office and I said, this is a great job. You're not paying me very much. I need a raise. He opened his drawer. He said, Howard, I've got 500 applications for your job. No. So I got a job actually in Dallas out of college as an assistant corporate sales manager for a chemical company. Worked for that guy, and he moved me over to a bankrupt company that he had purchased for himself. And he said, well, Howard, why don't you learn how to run a business, run my virtually bankrupt business? We spent about 1.5 years doing that. It was an industrial fastener company. Had about $1 million net worth change in that 1.5 years through just everything we could do to get rid of debt. And he came into me one day and he said, you've done a great job. Why don't you do me a favor? My wife will be thrilled. Let's buy her a car to celebrate. And by the way, here's $1,000 Christmas bonus for you for doing such a good job. Well, needless to say, I freaked out. Came home to my wife and I said, this sucks. This is like ridiculous. I just did all this for him. So that day I gave him a 6-month notice. And ever since then, anyone who talks to me, I say, if you work for someone and they're willing to pay you, then either you're dumb or they figured out how to monetize your labor. So why don't you figure out how to make money for yourself? So we actually started a aerospace parts business out of our spare bedroom. Had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. My first customer I talked to was the buyer for the Naval Research Laboratory in Washington, D.C., who trusted me enough to buy some parts. And we built a company called Countdown Aviation. It morphed into a much larger company, bought a larger competitor, and then started a manufacturing company to manufacture one of the product lines that we were selling. That business was terrific. A group of Dallas investors bought us out. We did not intend on selling it. They came and they offered us just a crazy offer at the time. I was young. I was in my probably about 30 years old, and it was more money than I could imagine.
What year was that?
Oh golly,
The 80s, 90s,
it was
2000s.
in the 90s, late mid 90s probably.
I'm familiar with both industries, so that's why I'm asking. So like the fastener side of things, I have a good friend of mine who worked for Fastenal and then a company called DGI. So I hear all the stories from that end. Then I have a
Right.
really good friend of mine who's the VP for a huge aerospace company here in South Florida. So
Okay.
I get to see both sides. I mean, I don't know the business inside out, but we talk. And from aerospace, what I've noticed from talking to him is very up and down, depending if we have a war going on or not.
Correct.
Because that's when the government's
Correct.
buying parts, right?
Well, at the time, we were fortunate and we were good at what we did. We were selling to every major airframe manufacturer on the planet. It really expanded. Boeing was a big customer, all the helicopter people. It was just terrific. So, in fact, the only reason I sold it was we were running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We were closed Christmas and New Year's. But one of my original employees ended up running my third shift and got a drug habit. And I saw his life crash and burn, and I realized that I could not run a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week
How many CNC
business.
machines did you guys have?
Yeah, so yeah.
How many CNC machines did you guys have?
Oh, at the time we had 8 CNC machines, we had 8 screw machines, we had gun drill equipment,
Right.
we had our own plating shop. We had our own, centerless grinders.
Most people are listening to you, they're in the digital world. So for those of you guys that don't know what a CNC machine is, CNC machine is a machine that you can program to make parts for you. So you put an aluminum block or stainless steel or correct me if I'm wrong, whatever the material is, and the CNC, it's programmed to cut it, and that's how you get, I don't know, like a wheel, like a car wheel or whatever parts you're making. And they're very tricky to maintain as well with the chemicals and all that stuff. Like I saw it firsthand, so I know what you're talking about. But that's a pretty big operation. I mean, 3 shifts and,
Yeah, it was a big business. Looking back, I almost wish I had kept it because later on in my career, we go digital and there's a whole different world between having 140 employees in a manufacturing facility versus, creating online businesses. But we did sell that. And actually, I got the best advice of my career from the buyer. He asked me why I was selling it. And I said, because he offered me so much. I really had no desire to. And he said, after we signed the papers, you shouldn't have sold it because most people have one home run in their life and they'll piss away their money and they'll never see it again. Well, that was so motivating and just a focal point of the rest of my career. So it started me on a lifelong venture of serial entrepreneurship because I wanted to prove that dude wrong. And as it turned out,
we all got a chip on our shoulder.
He failed at running it, and it's no longer in business.
Yeah,
and we have done quite well through.
My first couple of stores that I launched, I sold both for a big chunk of change, and they were both running to the ground because they didn't know what they were doing. And I told them, like, you got to know what you're doing. And I was on board consulting for a couple months, and I told them exactly what needed to be done, and they just thought they knew better. So they decided to change everything. I'm like, why? And then just crash and burn.
There's a big difference between being an entrepreneurial operator and being, what you think is a businessman. Two vastly different universes.
Listen, I learned from my failures. I mean,
absolutely.
I have so many I can't even count. And then, I work jobs, in between. And it's like, I've been fired so many times, especially when I was a teenager. Are you kidding me? I used to get fired every other day. So I thought I could do it better than the people telling me how to do it. So I was like, why I did it? Because I had a chip in my shoulder. It's a long story, but I've always had a chip in my shoulder. And it's like, I'm not going to work for anybody else. And at one point, I actually said I was happy with a job that I got. And it's the one that got me really hardcore into marketing in the first place. And I was like, you know what? I'm tired of the headaches. I'm tired of the stress. Maybe I'll make less, but these people are cool, blah, blah, blah. And the same thing happened. I made them all this money. And then I got screwed. I think it was like a $7,000 bonus or something like that. I was like, oh, really? Really? I was like, okay. All right. I see how it is. And that was it. That just threw me over the edge again. I was like, never again. So I get it. All
Yep.
right. So you sold the company.
We
It was a
sold
home
it.
run, and then that you kept going. So what happened after that?
So then I bought a bankrupt stainless steel fabricating company, um, and we turned it around. We got Applebee's and Chili's as customers, um, and built it to a decent sized little company. And one day, the Applebee's quality control guy came in to our facility. We had a 50,000 square foot manufacturing facility, and he looked at a cook line that looked fabulous to me. It was beautiful. And he proceeded to write down about 50 things that were wrong with it. And I said that day, I don't know enough about this business, so I need to sell it too. And it only took us about 2 years, and we sold it then and did well selling that business. So I
Man,
learned a lesson
you have the
there.
magic touch.
Well, you need to learn, what your skill set is and
Right,
what
right.
you enjoy, and if you don't enjoy it, you need to cut it out. Luckily,
Absolutely.
we won, so it was good. Now, my next one was not so good. It didn't turn out so well. It was my
R-
big failure as the next business. And we bought a small chain of retail stores.
Okay.
We built it into the largest chain of independent athletic footwear and apparel stores in Texas. Was
Can
called
you say the
Athletic
name of it?
Attic. Sure, Athletic Attic. We
Okay.
had 15 stores.
Wow.
Um, yeah, we were all over Texas. Um, our model was good had I stayed with it, but I thought my rear end didn't stink and that I could do anything. So we went into some major markets um, at exactly the worst time possible because for a while Nike and Adidas apparel were real hot and everyone was wearing that, and then they weren't.
Right.
And what you find out in retail, at least brick and mortar retail, is the only thing you can do to build sales sometimes if you don't have a hot product is to cut prices. Well, if you've got a difficult time, cutting prices is not necessarily a good formula. So um, we
So,
saw the writing on the wall, and that thing was not going to work.
so I'm glad you brought that up, and it's interesting to me to hear that because I grew up as a kid working retail. Like that was my first job. So that's how I got into sales and I guess marketing from day one because I was learning from like all these big corporations, right? And what I noticed about in retail, now that I look back, I remember the first thing they drill on your head was accessories. You got to sell accessories. Well, now I get it because I know how much all this stuff costs to make. So I get it. But I always know now that I know what I know, like I look back to all those jobs and I'm like, oh my God, it was so broken. Like the whole experience walking in, and there was no funnel of value ladder to get you from the cheapest, product or freebie to get you to buy the most expensive at the end. And it's just like, I look back and I'm like, you hear about companies like Toys R Us, right? Toys R Us. I mean, I grew up with Toys R Us. I'm a kid of the 80s, not even from America. And I know Toys R Us. Like we used to come on vacation to the US and, one of the biggest trips while we were here, it's like, we're going to Toys R Us. And, I was a lucky kid, and my dad would buy me all these toys. Right. And a brand like that to go under just because they didn't see the writing on the wall. I sit here and I'm like, how? But then I deal with I have big clients that are big corporations, and it's like every decision has to get through like 50 departments. And by the time it gets to the person who can make that decision, it's too late. So like a person like me, from what I've learned up until now, and this is going to sound super cocky, and I know it is because like, who are you to think that you can do this? But if I was running something like Toys R Us, right, and I see the numbers on the first thing I'm going to look at is like numbers. So like, let's see the numbers, overhead, profits, sales, everything. I'll be like, obviously they own real estate, right? I'll be like, all right, first thing we're doing is severance packages for everybody. We're going to close down every retail store. We're going to leave the legacy stores, Miami, New York, Dallas, LA, whatever. And we're shifting everything online. And I'm sorry for people who lose their jobs. I mean, you got to save the company, right? So shift everything online because I know the power online between YouTube, Google, Facebook, all of them. And then you make the actual anchor stores in the big cities like an experience. Like we're like, oh my God, let's go to the store. And you have like, you know what I mean? That's what I would have done personally. So it's like, I'm sure it's easy to say than dealing with it when you have a million people to make a decision. But it's like sometimes we don't see, you know, and I made mistakes too. Sometimes we don't see the writing on the wall, or like technology is shifting, or where the market is shifting. Like right now with COVID, like I see so many, my business blew up in the consultation side of things because people didn't know what to do. And they, you know, they dragged their feet for so long. They're like, okay, we have to do something. Like no one saw this coming, right? So it happens to everybody.
Absolutely. Yeah. But the one thing that the smart businessman needs to do is they need to know when they're losing and when you're throwing good money after bad, or good effort after a meaningless, non-existent return. So we did cut our losses, and we lost a lot of money.
Yeah.
Sold our best stores to Hibbett Sporting Goods. And then shut down the rest, negotiated out the debt, and luckily walked away, just losing money, not filing personal bankruptcy.
But see, you're not emotionally attached to it. You know how many people I have met that they get completely emotional attached to their stores or to their products. I'm like, listen, you got to listen to the data. If the data says otherwise, I don't care how much you like your product, like it's not gonna work. Like, and that's, I used to be that way too. When I first started with online sales, I used to get emotionally attached to products all the time. And then at one point I just had to cut it. And because, I was like, oh, this was going to do so great. And we just flop. And then the one that I thought wasn't going to sell was my best seller for months. And then it'll make, tons of money. So, I mean, I'm sure you can give the best piece of advice is do not get emotionally attached to your products or your business, and do research of what the necessities of people are. Instead of just saying, hey, I like to entertain, so I'm going to open a restaurant today. That's like the craziest thing that I hear all the time. I'm like, have you ever worked at a restaurant? Because I did in college, and I can tell you it's a lot of work if you don't know what you're doing, and it's not easy.
Well, one of the lessons that I learned, and I learned it a lot online, is my opinion is usually wrong. Data's always right.
Yeah.
So we A/B test an awful lot in our websites.
Yeah.
And I can't tell you, I'll bet you 3/4 of the time, if you gave me an A and a B and you said, which one do you think is going to win, 75% of the time I'm wrong. I'm stunned.
Me too. I've done it so many times on sales funnels and websites. I'm like, all right, let's split test the page. And I'll be like, you know what? This one's beautiful. I've done this for so long. Like this one's going to win. And you run traffic, and sure enough, I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I did not see that coming. It happens all the time. You're right. You're absolutely right on that one.
They like purple?
I know. It's like, I'm like, that font is hideous, and that's the one you like?
But, so successful people say the data is true and my opinion is meaningless.
Absolutely, 100%.
Most people don't ever get there.
No. So what happened after that unfortunate mishap with the retail chain?
So licking my wounds, finding out that my rear end again stunk and that I could fail, and we lost millions. So it was a big hit. So one of the girls who worked for me, I took 6 months off just to try to lick my wounds and try to figure out what I was going to do. One of my best employees went into fundraising. And at the time, this is now 16 years ago, so about 2002, the internet was new for the most part, and fundraising was a very localized industry with little local people getting out of their car and opening their trunk and selling, but no one was doing it nationally. So we built one of the first 2 product websites to be national in scope and make school fundraising and even group fundraising accessible. Site was called Easy Fundraising Ideas. We learned SEO the hard way, 2003.
Okay. All right.
Learned SEO the hard way, the painstaking way. Learned, as Google was learning and growing, all the things you needed to know to do, and made all the mistakes you could make, with the shortcuts that,
backlinks.
Oh, absolutely. For a little bit. Got in Google's penalty box for a little while. Took us a year to get out. But we were the busiest online product fundraising website in the country.
It's amazing.
Sorry. Did that. That's okay. So we did that for a while, but what I noticed was the largest chunk of the industry, product fundraising, it's a $2.5 billion industry, was schools. And schools weren't biting on these small fundraisers. And when you talk to them, they said, boy, my results are getting worse and worse and worse. And that's when we started building Read-a-thon. So again, what we started at building is nothing like what it turned out to be. But we built a phenomenal everything you need in the box program that schools simply follow everything we give them, and they can read to raise money. And it's gone so well. We sold Easy Fundraising 3 years ago, and focused solely on this. And you were talking about a COVID world. The book fair industry and the school fundraising industry in general has been decimated. You're not going to have school gatherings. You can't have a kickoff. You don't want kids selling. You don't want them handling money. We may be the only business standing in, the accumulated $4 billion nugget that was product fundraising and school book fairs. You just can't do those. So we were already growing extraordinarily fast this year. We're just expecting just to be blown away by what happens this year for our company.
So basically you saw the jump of like, oh my God, like now this is like a full on necessity. It's like my consulting side of things. It's like the first couple of days, everybody freaked out. Everybody wanted to pause budgets. And I'm like, I get it. I know we have contracts and everything, but I completely understand where you're coming from because I don't know what's going to happen either. And then I think it was 3 days after that, if that, we just saw that shift just go, man, it was like Christmas all over again. I'm like, how are all these people spending all this money? We don't know what's going to happen. And people are just spending. We saw more traffic than Black Friday for weeks.
Wow.
And I'm like, I guess people are getting those stimulus checks at some point and they're just spending like crazy. So I can see how for you guys, this is, our world has changed here for a while, at least. I wouldn't say forever, but for a long time. So, I can see how exponentially you guys are just going to the top. So.
Right. So for us, we do think it's a forever shift. The same as retail moved from brick and mortar to online. School fundraising in general has moved online.
I can see that.
Even if you go back to the early days of GoFundMe, and I know those guys, they actually came to us at Easy Fundraising to get them traffic early on in their deal.
Really?
And those guys, failed twice before GoFundMe really became a hit. We were actually playing against them. We had a domain called Donation Fundraiser, but the technology wasn't there for small, quick transactions. Well, Brad and his team did phenomenal at building GoFundMe at just the right time. And we feel like we're there for school fundraising. Where GoFundMe, your customer is anybody, it's hard to sell to anybody if you can't define who anybody is.
Correct.
For us, we have a defined universe, 140,000 schools in the U.S., and then all the preschools and schools all over the world that should switch to our product. So our goal is to be in 140,000 schools before we shut the lights off.
That's amazing. So let's talk a little bit more about the company, obviously.
Okay.
You've been doing it for a while. So how does the whole process work? So let's say I want to do a fundraiser. So how does the whole process work? Can you walk me through that?
Yeah, so a school signs up, takes them, our sign-up process has expanded a little bit because we decided that more data was a little bit important for us to coach them on how to do well. But they could sign up in about 5 minutes.
Right.
Gives us everything we need, and then we provide 3 sets of contacts for the school. We have an in-house print shop, so we send them old-fashioned print materials. We have a messaging center in our platform, and then we now have tied our resources into the common communications programs like Remind and GroupMe and those kind of things. So schools just use what we give them, send it out to the parents. tell the parents, boy, we've chosen to monetize reading. We actually hired behavioral scientists to help us design the communication with the parents to make it as palatable as possible. A parent signs their child up, activates their page. We ask the parent to make a donation. And then we walk the parent through about a 90-second tour of our tools to reach out to everyone, grandparents, aunts and uncles, friends and family, social media, texting. And then they're essentially done with the fundraiser. So if you're a parent with kids, instead of having to do anything like you typically historically had to do, in 90 seconds, you've done everything I need you to do. And the results are unbelievable. We've gotten our average donation up to $35. Our top single donation was $5,000.
Wow.
And this was the one that freaked me out the most. One child got 68 different sponsors. One child. So these people used our tools, send all the emails that we told them to do, post it on social media, and ended up getting 68 people to make a donation.
That's amazing.
It's amazing, and it's so simple. It's just so simple. So, I mean, I wish I was smart enough and I could have told you 6 years ago when we started it what I had.
Yeah, right.
I had no idea what I had.
So let me ask you something. So I just had a kid. So we need to do a fundraiser or whatever. I sign up, you send me the print materials and stuff like that. So you actually provide the people with the print materials, which is like, I've never seen that. So that's pretty cool. So you got that. And then you actually give him emails to send out, like pre-made emails and all that stuff?
Pre-made emails, and we've even gone as far as identifying the best sponsors. Like for a child reading, grandparents are the most generous. So we have a grandparent portal. So we send out grandparent-specific emails, grandparent-specific social media posts, and we take them to a grandparent-specific donate page. I mean, I hate to say it, but playing on the grandparents' desire to spoil their grandchild.
Of course.
And those donations are terrific. I mean, they're about twice the average.
There's nothing wrong with that.
So, like we say, no one out there is going to say, man, this child who I know is reading a lot. That's a bad thing.
No, absolutely not. I mean, one thing that I noticed, I was an avid reader from a very, very young age, and I don't know how it came to be. I mean, I guess my parents used to read with me when I was a kid, and for some reason, I don't know, it was just ingrained in me. There was always books and stuff, for me to read, and I just picked it up quickly. And one thing that I noticed when I moved to the States in high school, I was 13, so I moved here to start 9th grade, and I came from a private Catholic school. One thing that I noticed is like I was way more advanced in reading than most of my classmates. Like I barely knew English, and I can still get up in front of the class and just read a chapter, just like boom, fly through it. But there was a lot of students that their reading was very broken and like really slow, or they couldn't. What do you think that is? What do you think it's going on? I never really thought about it until I thought about it just now. But it's like, what do you think that in some other places we're better educated to read and comprehend what we're reading and retain it than here, where you have. I've seen kids, and older people like even in their 20s that they can't just read a paragraph. Right. What do you think that is? What do you think the fault is on that? What do you think it's going on that's causing that in the education system?
Well,
it's kind of a loaded question.
No, and I really do have a very strong opinion about it. I think the U.S. education system, and I've gone to a lot of seminars with where venture capital people within the education space gather and listen to feedback. And I think that our education system is completely broken. We're trying to create assembly line workers instead of creating intelligent, thought-thinking little kids. In fact, I can't remember the physicist, the world famous physicist, he said, by the 3rd grade, every child in America loves science. And then what happens? Then we make them study it. We force them to do the same thing that everyone else wants to do. We lose the excitement, and I think that's what happened in the U.S. system. We traveled to Europe a lot, and in Finland and places like that, they think we overschool. We don't let them grow up and learn, passion and what they like. And,
I've given it a lot of thought ever since, my kid was born not too long ago. And because now I have a kid, so you start thinking about these things. And to me, you're right. I completely agree with you in the whole, like, we're just building an assembly line of, go to college, get a job, and then, retire when you're 80 with your 401k or whatever. And listen, there's nothing wrong with going out and getting a job, because not everybody should be a business owner, an entrepreneur, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Just make sure you end up doing something that you like. I think the biggest issue that I see here, and I have friends who are teachers in public schools here in Florida, is that it's all about testing scores so they can get more funding. So they're not really teaching. They're really just making them memorize things just so they can pass a test. And to me, that takes the fun out of it. I remember being in 8th grade and taking physics, and physics was fun because we will play with things that we would make and set stuff on fire and all that stuff, and chemistry. And it's like, I remember when I moved to the States, it's just like, it wasn't like that. It was like, oh, okay, well, just sign up for classes and do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to take, if you took one science, you don't have to worry about science anymore. Or if you took algebra 1 and 2, you don't have to worry about it anymore. Of course, at the time, I'm like, this is awesome, but now that I look back, I was like, no, man, it should be fun. It should be about training, encouraging a creativity and the creative side of things. Like, the other thing that I tell all my friends about, now that I have a kid, it's like, I deal with social media every day and marketing and digital marketing and all that stuff. So I know the gamification that goes behind all these apps and the games and the apps, the apps and just Facebook itself, Instagram, all that stuff. I know how it works. I know what it's designed to do. I know how the algorithms put you in this bubble. And that's why we see the division that we have nowadays. And the last thing that I tell all my friends, I was like, because we're all having kids at the same time, it's like, do not give them the phone. Do not babysit your kid with the phone or a tablet. I mean, if you're going to use it, put a movie on and block everything out. Block the signal, block everything else out. Because all those notifications, that's just dopamine hits. It's just dopamine, straight up dopamine hits. And you're handicapping their creativity. Like, my kid has toys all over the place, and I want him to, like, look at them and feel them. And you know what I mean? Like, we learn from boredom, I guess. That's how you get creative, right?
Absolutely. So, if you look at studies of the most successful entrepreneurs, most of them have learning disabilities. They're ADHD, dyslexic, other things that make them think outside the box because they couldn't conform to the way everyone else did things. So, maybe they should learn that maybe if you foster some out of the box behavior, you'll get some out of the box results instead of, everyone's the same. It just, it breaks my heart.
Because that's the other thing. Like, everybody likes to make the excuse for ADHD and all that stuff. Like, listen, my parents thought I had ADHD when I was growing up. And I don't think that's the case, because when I didn't pay attention, it was because I didn't care for it.
Right.
But when it's something I care about, I zone in and I can go 12 hours straight, just like blinders on, nothing else distracts me. But yeah, do I want to sit there and learn about calculus? No, man, my mind is somewhere else. This is not for me. If you want to be an engineer, people love it. I personally don't. I was more on the creative side of things, I don't know, sciences and film, but like math, forget it. I was horrible at it.
So if your teachers had asked you, tell me what your passion is. What are you most interested in? I mean, man, you would have lit up like a light. And
absolutely.
Said, wow.
Yeah.
And you would have become fabulous at it because someone's recognized your gift and let you grow in it. I mean, that's what I think.
I believe you still got to learn a little bit of everything. Absolutely.
The basics, absolutely.
I completely appreciate that 100%. But at some point, it's like, okay, guys, I just graduated high school where I took algebra 1, 2, and then geometry, and now you're gonna put me back to algebra 1, 2, and calc. Like, come on, can we just let it go? I'm not an engineer.
Right.
That's just my personal opinion on it. But oh my God, we've been going forever, so we're already running out of time. But all right, cool, Howard. Where can everybody find you? Where can everybody find the program? How can they help? Give us all the everything so people can find you. I can put it in the description and all that.
Okay, so the easiest way to find us, I would suggest to people, is just go to Google and search for Read-a-thon. We'll be first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, probably.
Nice.
It's the easiest way to find us instead of trying to type out the domain. On the other hand, if you have young kids and you don't want to sell cookie dough to your neighbor, and you're sick of all of the things that they do, just suggest to your school that, hey, I heard about this reading fundraiser that only takes me 90 seconds, and you're going to give my kids prizes to read. I like that idea. So why don't you check it out? And we find that a groundswell of parents are our best salespeople. They go to a school. They said, my child did a read-a-thon with read-a-thon.com at this last school. Boy, y'all should do it. I mean, and you should look. I would challenge people, if they come to my website, look at my testimonials. We have about 1,000 testimonials on our website, which is more than the entire fundraising industry collectively. And watch a couple of the videos on our site. We really, I mean, I hate to say it because it's ours, but it's just the most logical.
Is anyone else doing it? Is anyone else doing it?
No, I actually own a trademark. I actually own the name Read-a-thon with hyphens, and we just bought the trademark without hyphens. So
that's amazing.
Technically, you can't do it. And starting Christian's Reading Fundraiser just doesn't have the same.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, listen, I think, I mean, you probably already know this because you have the data, but I think this is going to be massive. This is going to be huge. So if you have kids, I'll probably use it at some point. Once this little one gets a little bit bigger and we need to start doing all that kind of stuff, I will use it. And for everybody out there, check it out. Howard, this has been one of my most enjoyable conversations, interviews, whatever you want to call it. And thank you so much for taking the time to come on. And again, everybody, if you have kids, check it out. Go look at it. And Howard, thank you again. And then I'll see you guys on the next episode.